Lisa Belli.
Heather Brown. Threw that ball to him and fell down. Once I fell, my knee, it hit the ground. Trainer told me my patella popped out of the groove. When I tried to get up, I couldn't even move. Ow.
Rest, ice, and tape it.
Then elevate it.
Rest, ice, and tape it. Then elevate it. Rest, ice, and tape it. Then elevate it. Rest, ice, and tape it. Then elevate it. From now on it's gonna change. It popped back into the groove. Now I gotta go to rehab, make my knee just like new. She proved what she knew with the apprehension test. It was subluxation rate. Lay down and get some rest. The therapist first had me ice in my knee. It kept the swelling down and kept me very happy. Next I had to start stretching out my muscles. First I did the hamstrings, giving me no trouble. Gastroc and soleus were a piece of cake. Quads were the only thing that gave me a headache. Then to strengthen my knee, I did some quad sets. If I fell, the therapist was there to catch me like a net. After a while, I did some step-ups. Next, I went to the field and kept my head up. She had me running around, testing out my knee. It was good as new. I was very happy.
Trainer told me my patella popped out of the groove. When I tried to get up, I couldn't even move. She wanted me to have a very strong knee. This is some of what she told me.
Do the BAPS board, mini trampoline, then the slide board, and the wobble board. Run those suicides, then start walking. Finish with jogging. Now it's all better.